All right, fellas, let's get into it. Ever since I became more conscious of having better conversations, it's helped expose weaknesses in other areas of my life. A realization that I had this week was that there are rules, certain subconscious rules that we follow. These subconscious rules impact our judgment in a way that ultimately limits what we are able to do or what we feel like we're able to do. If you clicked on this video, I imagine you're someone that's interested in becoming a better person, growing. You might be an entrepreneur, and in doing things, you've come across challenges, hurdles, roadblocks that have placed limitations on what you're able to achieve. But I feel like it's important to distinguish these limitations between concrete limitations and more abstract limitations. Concrete limitations being things like money and capital. If you're starting a business, money and capital is something that you need. It's not something that you can never get around. It's not something that you can't fix, but it's a real physical thing that you need. Abstract thing, more like mindset and your belief systems. So this video, I want to share how I came across this realization that there are subconscious rules limiting what I was able to do, some examples of me running into this limitations in the real life, and maybe some examples of how subconscious rules might be limiting your life, and ultimately how you're able to deal with it. I came across this realization via public speaking class. I think public speaking class has been something that has constantly exposed different areas of improvement for me. But in this particular example, I found them out via different practice exercises that we were doing. In public speaking, we do these different exercises to hone in on different principles that we're practicing. And throughout these different practices, I started to realize I had this expectation that my response needed to be interesting, funny, or just otherwise exciting. And this, I realized, was a limitation because it was ultimately impacting the quality of my practice. There are certain rules and principles that we need to follow for the practice to make sure we're learning the points that we're meant to learn. But beyond that, there were self-inflicted requirements that I had on myself for no other reason than what I felt like these responses should be. And in trying to make a response funny and exciting and interesting on top of the different rules that this exercise had, it ultimately impacted the quality of the practice because I was overthinking things and I was doing just a little bit too much. In the real world, it happens in conversations for me too. It's something that I realized. For example, one time I was talking with one of my friends and his friends, and they asked me how my trip to LA was because they're from LA. And truthfully, I didn't like the trip to LA that much. It wasn't that much fun. But my self-inflicted rule here was to be mild, to not stir the pot, to not rock the boat, and to not say something too controversial. How that manifested in the response was, "Oh, I liked LA. It was fun. It was good." A very, casual response. And I realized that was a flaw as soon as I said it because there was nothing I could say to really back that up. It wasn't authentic. And so there are expectations that we have, however they're imposed, that make us act in a certain way that's not true to how we should act. It happens in conversations for me all the time as I look back. There's an expectation that my response needs to be funny, needs to be interesting, needs to be something that's incredibly charismatic. But the truth is that I just need to be a little bit more authentic and respond in a way that's catered to whatever the other person was saying. That's true to myself. It's manifested in work as well. Being a first year in this position, I realized there were times where I thought I needed to stay in my lane do the assignments that I was assigned to and not overstep by taking on additional responsibilities and assignments. I had a conversation with my manager a few weeks back where he voiced that he, wanted me to take a more proactive approach, to do a little bit more on top of what was just assigned to me, on top of what was just asked. And I realized that this rule was really just something that I had in my head, that I shouldn't overstep, that I shouldn't do too much. And hearing him say that, I realized that was just me. The whole company, the whole team probably does not have that feeling at all. They would love if I was more proactive and taking on more stuff. But having that belief held me back from taking that next step. In the real world, for you, I think one of the most common limitations is age. You feel like you can't do something because you're too young. To draw an analogy, it's like having a driver's license. You can't get a driver's license until you're 16, 17, whatever state you live in. But in life, in taking on entrepreneurial ventures, in starting a business, in doing anything, if you have the skills, age is really just a number. For me, I graduated college in 3 years at the age of 20, and before 21, landed a job that was making me 6 figures. And I say that to say, the real world doesn't care about what age you are. If you have the skills, then you are able to go ahead and do it. I'm in the real estate space a lot. I know real estate investors that are 19 years old, 18 years old. It really doesn't matter what age you are, as long as you have the skills to do it. And lastly, I want to talk about how I deal with it. I think the number one thing that I do deal with it is to spend time alone. And I think spending time alone can solve 80% of your problems. I think spending time alone is important because you allow time to be introspective. You allow time to see what internal rules truly exist for you. And a lot of these internal rules will simply be the values that you live by. Identifying the internal values allows you to then identify a lot of the externally imposed rules. This is where I think it's most important. Knowing that these external rules are there, you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to live by those. So for me, I spend a lot of time just thinking what it is that I need to do and why I need to do it. And in doing that, why I'm not doing that already. And that framework leads me to the roadblocks, mindset, challenges that I'm dealing with right now that are preventing me from taking that next step. And so once that's identified, I think about whether or not they're real, such as a concrete example like money, or they're a more abstract example like mindset. It's a mindset limitation that I feel like I can't, but really I can.